Hi, Jacob Field here once again for the High Performance Property Investment Podcast. Today I am joined by a very special guest, someone who loves pizza, loves property, loves talking about real estate, and is a very experienced real estate agent, someone who's been around these traps for some time and someone who I really do enjoy talking to. We are joined today by Todd Sloan, based here at the airport. He's not currently living in a home, he's living at the airport. He's in between transits. I actually just spoke to him and thought it was a good time to catch up. He's doing his lessons to become a pilot. So, Todd, thank you for sliding us in today. Been really looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, mate. And look, living at the airport is just one of the sacrifices I need to do to invest. Anything to keep that ham down. And, increase my borrowing capacity.
That's all good. You might need to unpack some chairs and things and earn your wage around there, but that's awesome. Hey, for those of you that don't know, Todd is based in Adelaide. He does also host the Pizza and Property podcast. So I'll do a bit more of a shout out about that in a moment. But that's how I got to understand you and your background, Todd. Obviously, very successful in what you do as a sales agent, and the knowledge you have, the depth of knowledge that you do have, it comes across in spades from that podcast and how you do communicate with the audience. It really is a credit to you. So I thought it was worthwhile in bringing you along today because I wanted to pick your brain. As a sales agent, how can we really leverage that knowledge as property investors? Can we maybe start with going into a little bit of a background as you as a sales agent? So Todd, the sales agent, can you give us a high level overview there if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. So look, how do I sort of summarise this? I had an accident on a drill rig, used to be a diamond driller, couldn't walk properly for almost 4 years. I ended up sort of, let's just call it celebrating walking properly again. And I walked from Adelaide to Melbourne and then
Goodness.
ended up needing to get a job. And my dad was all like, well, you love real estate, why don't you become an agent? My almost exact words to him was like, because they're a bunch of flogs, I don't want to do that. And he's like, well, how about you just do it and not be a flog? I thought, yeah, I guess I can give that a go. And anyway, got into the industry. Turns out that a lot of the people there's definitely some like stereotypical like real estate agents in the industry. There's no doubt about that. Most of them were actually like great guys and girls and just really trying to work hard. And I just really fell into the industry in a big way and loved it. And
nice.
Almost 8 years later, as of Monday, actually, I've only just changed careers around. So now I'm technically a former real estate agent.
Yeah, and it's probably a timely conversation because, if you're operating as a real estate agent, there might be trade secrets. You've got alliance, or not really alliance, but you've got things that, different perspective, I guess. So that's why I think it's going to be really interesting speaking to you because, you're obviously talking with investors every day professionally, and now you're on the other side of the fence. Getting those insights, I think, is going to be really useful for us. So, obviously based in Adelaide, the Adelaide market really has been moving a lot the last few years.
Yeah.
So coming out on a high, you've done pretty well. It's good.
Yeah, it's been nuts, and it needed it. I think putting all the stimulus and everything aside, we were due for it in Adelaide, and I think it's why we're probably the last to really feel the slowdown.
Yeah.
Because like Sydney and Melbourne had some amazing growth, like sort of 2014, 2017, and Adelaide just kind of kept doing this. It's like ever so slightly we were going up, but we didn't really have any of that. And that's why I think it's been felt probably even more so in some pockets.
It's for those of you that haven't made it to Adelaide yet, it's definitely worth a trip. It is. I feel it is a very Australian city, but it's so polished. It's so accessible. Neat and tidy. You've got some wonderful amenities. Things are just where they should be. Some beautiful architecture. I think it's definitely worth a trip. And some beautiful restaurants, actually. I think that's probably the highlight of my trip. I always do like the odd restaurant. And obviously with yourself, you're an expert on pizza. So there must be a few of those going around in Adelaide.
Absolutely.
We went to this Moroccan restaurant over in, I think, the North Adelaide area.
Yeah.
It was, I can still, that meal, I can still remember it was like yesterday. Apparently the Moroccan, the head chef's mother was the chef to the Moroccan king or something. And so every year they went over to Morocco and picked up some private royal spices. This was the story. And they came back and they cooked these Moroccan dish using these spices that they picked up once a year. And I have to say it was absolutely phenomenal. It was such a good meal. And that's one of my memories of Adelaide. But you mentioned that you are, involved in property and very interested in it, but you are also a property investor, and property investment really did give you the options or the ability to walk away from sales agent. And you're obviously, still very young and focused, so it's given you that ability to do that. Can you give us a high-level overview of maybe how you fell into property investment and maybe some of the results that or the building that's been achieved from that?
Definitely, yeah. So property investing was really one of the first keys with it. So early on, I was actually wanting to produce a TV show, which was the whole reason I went to the mines, because everyone just saw a 19-year-old kid with stars in his eyes. And looking back, I was totally that kid as well. I didn't really have a plan with it. I can now understand why people didn't give me money. But I was so dedicated. I was just like, I'm getting it myself then. I'm going to get this money. And there was a couple of books I read, and one of them was actually Donald Trump's 101. This is before Donald Trump was who he is today.
Yeah.
And he was just back in the real estate developer days.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave me this idea of like, in the media sense, especially pre-YouTube, you either make it gigantic or you eat beans on toast for the rest of your life. There was no real middle ground. I didn't like that. And the second book I picked up was Steve McKnight's book of 0 to 260 in 7 years.
Yes.
And I picked up the Steve McKnight book after reading the Trump one, and that was just more of a penny drop for me kind of moment. I didn't do anything with it for ages though. Like I bought a unit, but it was like the classic, everything was wrong. Like I bought it with the heart, not with the head.
Yeah.
If I'm really honest, I was buying it to impress a girl that was coming over from Melbourne. I probably could have just rented the hotel room. Now it's been the hindsight, but yeah, I went all in.
How old were you then, Todd, if you don't mind me asking?
Sorry, what was that?
How old were you then, if you don't mind me asking?
21 then. So
awesome.
I was pretty young for the first one. And whilst technically I made a little bit of money on it, like I held it for almost 10 years and I didn't really sell it. Like I think I bought it for just under 300 and I sold it for like 350. So after 10 years, and by the time I didn't really pay much of the mortgage down, and I was silly with my money. It's like my whole focus in my 20s was basically drinking and chasing girls. It's like, it's a lot of fun, but it was definitely not something I'd prescribe for someone investing wise. And it wasn't until 2017 that I started getting, in my sort of perspective, getting my act together financially. And then that's when I bought a RENO project and actually started growing the portfolio.
Yeah, well done. So has renovations been a big part of it for you, or has...
Yeah, big time. Like, because as a sales agent, it took me a while to actually find my feet. And you go backwards very quick as an agent if you're not good at it. And I was basically on like 38 grand a year for the first year, probably 50 something for the next year. Like I was on very average money coming in. So hence why I ended up actually buying regionally. So my first property it was a joke. Like the mortgage was pretty much buying like a couple of cups of coffee each week.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so obviously their portfolio now is quite well rounded, and it's giving you these options to obviously step away from real estate agent, which you do enjoy, but now it's about following other labours of love. So it's an absolute credit to you. Do you think being a sales agent has helped you as an investor?
100%. Like I think one of the big things is it's actually given me that preview to the discussions at the dinner table, which this is the stuff that most people just don't see. And sometimes the language that an agent might use to a vendor, which can be the difference between you either getting a deal or not. Yeah. And you're just not privy to it when you're an investor.
It's funny, I've often thought and talked to other investors, my take on this is you're not necessarily negotiating with a vendor, you're negotiating with a sales agent, so they negotiate on your behalf with the vendor. You know, if you can form that relationship with the sales agent, so they're going into bat for you, then half your battle is already won. So it's probably that perspective, what you've just touched on, I definitely can relate to it and understand it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that. Have you ever heard that the 3 Ds of an agent?
No. Divorce, death, and what's the other one?
Well, I know the 3Ds of the sales side is towards the death, divorce, to bank, which the bank is not really a D, but it keeps the theme going. Okay. But it's the deal maker, the defender, and the douchebag, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
And it's basically the three different kinds of agents. Like the deal maker is the person that's like, yeah, okay, let's get this done. Like, and they kind of connect the dots. The defender is the one that's like, what, an offer of 500,000? Oh, this is clearly worth 700, and they almost get like offended by it. And then the douchebag is generally just the person that's just given up. They just don't even care anymore. And sometimes they can actually be really good to buy from.
Yeah.
I remember going to Open years ago. The guy, not only did he not say hello, Dad said he was sitting on the couch reading the newspaper.
Wow.
I thought he was the tenant. He was the agent. And, yeah.
I haven't heard the 3Ds. That is awesome. I haven't heard the 3Ds. That is awesome. Yeah. So knowing where the sales agent sits emotionally, and then obviously not putting them off, not turning them away, not sort of rubbing them the wrong way, being their ally, but understanding how they sit as a person and their motivation. That's awesome. That's really good. Yeah. And spot the douchebag. That's the next tip.
Yeah.
So is this type of information, I know, for those of you who don't know, Todd is the author of Australia's Home Buying Guide. Is this the type of information that's in that book? It is targeted towards first home buyers and obviously other Australians generally buying a home. But is this the type of information, the gold nuggets that are in that book, or potentially are there other modules or elements in there that are particularly relevant to investors?
Yeah, absolutely. Because whilst it's not a book on property investing as such, it's definitely one of the pieces in the puzzle for property investors, and in the sense of really understanding that buying process. And it's just like if you again, like you were saying before, to reference like the high level kind of overview, it's just that's one piece in it. But if you can really understand that piece very well, it's going to make such a difference on how that transaction actually flows as well. Like one of the really useful parts, I think, for property investing is or property investors, I should say, is probably the negotiation chapter. I pull apart a few different tricks and tips in there that I still sometimes baffles me that they actually work, but I think it's mainly nerves is one of the reasons it works, because a sales agent will transact anywhere from 20 properties to hundreds, some even do per year. You do it every day, it's normal, but for most people buying a property, especially if they're a first timer, they say like babies and houses. It's kind of like those two like emotionally heightened moments in your life, which you normally only do a couple of times. So that's why it's really, really easy to drop the ball. Hence why one of the reasons I wrote the book. So it's just nice, simple, easy steps to follow. So even if you are feeling a little bit like it's a bit of a big deal, you can kind of pull it back and just kind of follow the guide.
I love it. We might dig into that a little bit in a moment, if that's all right. It's some of these actual tips from the book, and I'm not trying to, I think this, we can talk about a book at a high level, but you have to go and immerse yourself in it to really get the benefits. So it'd be great to get some of the takeaways, but definitely go and check the book out, Australia's Home Buying Guide, for more details. But I wanted to get to the nuts and bolts of today, if that is okay, Todd. Thank you for giving that context. Thank you for giving the background. I wanted to pick your brain, right? It's not often, as I mentioned before, that we get to sit down with a sales agent who's just been at the coalface and now decided, I want to move into a different direction. So it's about learning these deep, dirty secrets that you guys do contain. We had a bit of a conversation last week. At a high level, can you summarise some of the different pricing strategies that you and a vendor do have, right? So we, as a punter, as an investor, are coming and looking at a property. It's offers over $400,000 or $400,000. We don't know the context. We don't know where the vendor's expectations are. Are there any go-to strategies that you use when you are working with a vendor to set pricing, and potentially with those strategies how we can, take advantage as an investor with our negotiations?
There's like a few questions in that.
There are, and I've got a habit of doing that. So, okay, why don't we start? Okay, are there any high-level pricing strategies or winning the listing strategies that you have seen with a sales agent? Obviously, a listing a property on the market, it starts with the sales agent convincing the vendor to list with them. And they have to make promises in that conversation. I think I can get this for this property, or I think we should start here and end up here, or what about an auction? So those types of winning the listing, that the sales agent getting that listing from the vendor, well, they have to live by that commitment. If we think we can get that, then you might, that property might be overpriced on entry, or it might be underpriced on entry. And we need to know that information so we can potentially negotiate differently. So what do you think are the core strategies that you use as a sales agent to get that vendor on board?
So I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the market now, because I'm already starting to see signs of it in the Adelaide market where
Yes.
there's vendors that maybe wanted to sell towards the later half of the year and early this year, and they didn't for whatever reason, and now they're all kind of jumping in with the expectation that things are still going like absolute crazy madness. So it's called vendor education, and as a good agent, you need to be able to really set the stage of realistically what's happening, but then still making sure we're shooting for the stars of what potentially could be. It's the balance between the two that sometimes, in my opinion, some agents get wrong. Because if you just sell the what could be, but sell it so much that it becomes the expectation of that kind of more reality-based level, you're probably just going to be sitting on that listing for months and months and months, because the market looks at you every time you have an open and goes, what's wrong with you? It's not worth 700, a million, whatever it is. It's only worth 600 or 800,000, or again, wherever the actual price is. So this is where, like, personally, when I was listing a property, I'd always see, like, let's just pick it's worth $500,000. That's rough, easy numbers.
Yes.
If I've got a vendor in front of me that's saying that they actually want 520, 550, you kind of look at that and go, maybe it's out there. You walk them through all the data and say, well, look, here's ABC 123 Street, just down the road. Where do you reckon this sits in comparison to yours? Is it better or worse? And if they're like, oh yeah, well, it's about the same, or it's better, it's worse, you kind of walk them to roughly where they should be. But then you can say, look, these are the things that we need to control. A lot of the time it's price, presentation, promotion. If we can control those, maybe we can actually get that buyer that's like, wow, I'll give you your 520, your 550, whatever we're swinging for.
Yes.
But if we kind of roll that conversation back to the start and that vendor wants 700, something that's just like, it's not happening.
Yes.
It's like we're both wasting each other's time. This is where personally I used to see exactly that. It was a waste of time. I took on a few listings like that in the early days, just because it was like, sure, why not? Let's give it a go. And I explained to the vendor that here's where reality is, here's where we're shooting for. As long as you understand that that's exactly that, we're shooting for that. We have no data to back up that this is going to happen. But if you want to give it a go, sure, let's do it. Those, as an investor, are often the best listings to look for. Because what ends up happening is you end up getting a decent surge at the very beginning of the listing campaign.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it just starts like dropping off and really, really tapering. It's a powerful thing when you're an investor to just hang around that first, or not the first, but just the whole open when you get there. You don't have to be seen. Sometimes you can just wait in the car at the front. But if there's only you or like maybe a couple of other people, and then the agent's trying to go, oh, yeah, so much interest. Oh, it's amazing. I'll beat the door down. You're like, dude, I saw you on the weekend. Like, there was only 4 people there. It's not quite like that. Those properties tend to get staler and staler. The less competition that you've got, because this price is so high, a lot of the time, the more negotiation power you've got. So if you see a property that is listed way too high, where you think maybe the agent bought the listing just because they were desperate for the business, don't look the other way and go, oh, they want too much money. That's something personally to focus on. Look at that. I don't know if you sort of ever use that as a tactic yourself when you're buying at all, Jacob?
I guess what we're sensitive of is, so we look for distress signals, so not as in distress for making the listing to begin with, in terms of, divorce and death and those types of things. But once the listing is on market, we look for distress signals. So discounting, as you say, how long has the property been on the market compared to the suburb median? We look for, has it flip-flopped? So the agents bought the listing, promised an auction. We've got wonderful demand here. We've got all these people interested. As it's coming towards the auction, it becomes obvious they don't have any interested parties. So they flip it down to a fixed price listing. These are really sort of blood in the water signals for me that yes, so probably to really clarify what you said, if the vendor's expectations are unrealistic at 700,000, you as an ethical, moral, an efficient and highly effective sales agent won't go in there and blow smoke up their bums. It will be, the property's worth 500. If I do a really good job as an agent, I might get you 550, and I'm going to back myself to get 550. But 700, you're dreaming. Where the next agent turns up in his BMW and says, "Don't worry, I can definitely get you 700,000. Come with me." That's the type of listing where you quickly see those distress signals where the vendor and the agent are at odds, and they're trying to get to a point where they can meet in the middle. And if the vendor's not budging in time, the sales agent's really losing interest. You know, they're going and doing open homes on a Saturday elsewhere. They might not have the open home that weekend. That, you know, it might be 3 weeks before since the last open home. They're not really, you know, they're not answering the phone to that listing. We start seeing that as well, and as you say, yeah, there's definitely those signals that we look for. Not so much in a seller's market like it has been nationally for the last couple of years, but we were really on top of those type of distress signals. And going back, 3 or so years, Todd, when the days on market sort of almost in Adelaide even was sort of around 70 or 80 days in a lot of suburbs, we probably wouldn't even start looking at a property until that 30 or 40 day mark, until we had seen those properties present themselves where we had those distress signals. You know, we would try and see those properties in a suburb that had been a little bit, had been 30 or 40 days. You don't know the listing in a buyer's market. You don't know the listing until that sort of 30-day mark. And when you can see that they've moved the price down a couple of, rungs in that first 30 days, it's really telling you a lot about the vendor-agent relationship for me. Anyway, I'm crapping on. You can hear me crapping on whenever you'd like, but we can't hear you, not crapping, but talking very often. So you're talking about a logic-based, let's look at the comparables, let's have a stretch target here, and I'm your man to be able to deliver that to you. I've talked to agents in the past, Todd, around what's called a pyramid strategy, or there's probably different definitions of it. I'm not sure if that nod sort of means that you know sort of where I'm going with this, but is that as a concept? Is that as a concept something you're familiar with as well?
Yes, yeah. I always refer to it as the buyer's triangles. It's
okay.
At the top is emotional buyers, in the centre's genuine buyers, in the bottom bargain buyers.
Beautiful. And probably just to elaborate, so it's it can be quite successful in the seller's market. It's been used quite a lot by particular agents down here in Hobart over the last few years, which has essentially been a seller's market for 5 years now. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to offers over a low price. So it takes a lot of trust from the vendor to sort of, I think the property's worth 500, but we might try for offers over 470, just to create that feeding frenzy of investors, the logic-based buyer, the bargain buyer coming in, and that's forming the base of the triangle. And then there's less genuine buyers, but they're forming the next round of offers, and then you've got that 1 or 2 genuine offers that come in. We saw this happen down here, by the way, just a really quick analogy in Hobart, middle to slightly upper socio area. It was about $1 million, the suburb median for a 3-bedroom home. And I talked to the real estate agent about this. They had around 30 offers that were the logic-based, bargain basement offer. And then I don't know the exact number of genuine offers in the middle, but then they had because of that feeding frenzy, they had put your best foot forward offer. So it's almost like a Dutch auction where, you have to lead with your best offer. There was one offer that was $300,000 higher than the second offer without any clauses. And there was a gap of, literally 30% between the second and the first offer. And sometimes that type of pyramid strategy really works for the vendor if they have that trust with the agent. How can we potentially take advantage of that as an investor, do you think?
As an investor, it's tricky. A lot of the time, it's more so about waiting out that campaign, because if they work, they generally work really well, and they work exactly like the way that you've described. And it's one of the biggest reasons you use it as an agent, because the market's either moving so rapidly that you genuinely don't know where it's going to end up, or the property's got such unique features to it, or it's really something that hardly ever comes up for sale, and there's going to be a big disparity between sort of bottom end and top end, that you use a strategy like that. But as far as taking advantage of it as an investor, don't get caught up in the hype, because that's the purpose. Like if I'm negotiating on a deal like that, and let's say I've got 10 offers, and let's say 8 of them are terrible, but I've got 2 that are like really good.
Yeah.
I'm going to be making sure I'm playing both of those people off against each other, but I'm going to be using the 10 offers, like all of them. I don't care if they're an offer for $100,000. It's making sure that people know that there's pressure on them. Don't fall for that when an agent says it. You need to be able to trust in your own numbers. You're buying this as an investment. You're not buying this because you love it. And as soon as it gets out of the realm of like, this is where it's working, you just walk away. Like it's just because otherwise someone is more than likely going to pay crazy amounts for it. And it's no longer an investment then. It's just a I want.
It's a good point, and I can think back to a Facebook post that I saw from you, Todd, where you had 17 written offers lined up on your office floor, one after the other from one listing. It's phenomenal.
I won't give addresses, but that's actually a perfect example. So that one, what was it? The top offer there, that was just a little unit, where it was $390. Okay, our next offer there was $380. Then our gap went all the way down to 300, and I think it was 310 or 315.
Wow.
And then most of our offers were actually high 2s and like around that 300,000 mark.
Goodness.
So there was just this huge gap. So our backup was pretty close to it, but otherwise if we lost those top 2,
wow,
we've lost almost $100,000, like $80,000.
Isn't that phenomenal? 25%. That is crazy. Yeah. It's yeah, I mean that's the information that as a buyer you'd love to know, I guess, and that's the whole push and pull of it. It's. Do you think as a sales agent there are questions that investors just should be asking? When they're coming to you and you've got this listing, what are those questions that investors, to get to the heart of the purchase, what do you see are the most effective questions that they could be asking you?
How many offers do you have in writing?
Yes.
And if you start having like ADS, which is agent doublespeak, something along the lines of, Jacob, it's so much interest, mate. Like my phone's ringing all the time, all these private inspections, rah. Translate that back to nothing.
So the investors ask you, and I'm just going to roll into this. The investors ask you in simple terms how many written offers, and the agent's backtracking now and go, so that's the doublespeak that you're talking of. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, because then if they're not answering the question directly, like if I've got 12 offers, that's my response. It's like, Jacob, we've got 12 offers on the property, mate. You've got to act quick on this.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, he's not here to stuff around. As much as anyone can lie about anything, realistically, that's something that an agent is not supposed to lie about. If we've got 4 offers, we've got 4 offers in writing.
Yep.
So that's usually where you'll hear the backtracky doublespeak if there is nothing. So that's a really powerful question to ask.
That's really good, and obviously that goes right to the punch. Any other questions in terms of? I guess a sales agent's always trying to do their due diligence on the investor and categorise them in terms of seriousness, and potential. Are there any, errors that you see investors making that are just showing their cards time and time again? What are those things that they need to really hold back potentially, and otherwise it's just losing leverage?
Yeah, it happens all the time when I'll ask people, especially when from negotiating, and they go to put an offer forward, and I'll just say, look, if this one actually doesn't get accepted, what would your next offer be? Because let's just save the whole back and forth. This is a seller's market. I don't want you missing out on this. The amount of times people actually come back and go, oh, look, if it's not, I can go an extra 10. I can go an extra 20. Keep your mouth shut. Don't say that, because as soon as you've said that, you've just paid an extra 10 or 20.
Yeah.
It's just, and it always gets me how quick people are like, but again, this comes back to the whole nervousness of it. You just don't think. I'm pretty sure as soon as people hang up that phone, they'll probably go, shouldn't have said that. But it's out there. And just be really careful of things like that, because a good agent will ask those questions just in such a smooth conversational way that you don't realise the gravity of the way that you're potentially about to respond. And something else as well is finding out where the actual price is. Again, a good agent should be guarding that for their vendor, because even if it's like asking prices for $500,000 and you're coming along going, look, Todd, what's it going to take to actually buy the property? I don't know if maybe you think it's worth $550,000, Jacob. So I want to feel you out first before I just give you a number like that. So that's something that's really good. If an agent's guarding it too much, throw a huge number out there. I've done this a few times, and they're like, oh, look, you know, Jack, I just don't know where it's going to end up, mate. It's such a crazy time. Just go, oh, look, would they accept 800? It's like, yeah, of course they'd accept 800, mate. Or do you want to offer 800? Well, no, I just don't want it. I just want to know, like, they do have a number in mind, don't they? And you have to do it playfully because it's a bit of a smart aleck thing to do.
Yes.
But I've done this before where I've just kind of chipped down to, like, this is realistically where it's going to actually end up. And does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it's awesome. And so probably some takeaways from my observations in that is, you know, keep it light, keep it casual. It's professional, but you need to have a relationship. You need to have rapport. And that's when you can get away with those cheeky questions when they are framed in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you do that with like a fist on the table kind of thing, you're the person that when later on at the dinner table is going to be described as this difficult to deal with, arrogant, I'm concerned for you, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor. Like, yeah, if they're tricky now, they can be really tricky during the settlement period and things can sometimes fall apart. That's how that conversation goes if you're trying to be like that kind of person.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, probably going back just really quickly to the buyer's triangle type conversation, right? So you've got a lot of bargain offers and you've got some, you know, some middle tier offers here, which are the genuine offers. That's probably a pretty good result as an investor to be in the genuine offer pool in this environment, in a seller's market. You know, you probably think you'd give and take that. How as an investor can you shine as a genuine offer when there might be the one or two, you know, crazy emotional offers? How can you get your genuine offers accepted in this environment? What are some of the things that potentially around professionalism or ease of dealing with or conditions that might be the thing that gets your offer over the line?
You're spot on there with the C word. Favorite one is conditions. If you can make your conditions as easy as possible. Like I just recently got one under contract. This is 4 weeks ago.
Yes.
We had... actually, again, I won't talk addresses with this, but let's just say one was 145 mil, and it was actually 1452 for memory.
Yes.
We had another offer though that was I think it was 155. It was like substantially more.
Yes.
But the reason the vendors didn't go with it was because it was not only subject to finance, it was also subject to sale and subject to a job transfer. So it's like, okay, here's one thing we don't have any control over, but we can at least look into.
Yes.
Another thing that we don't have any control over, but we can kind of look into. And one, we have no control, and we can't even look into it. What are we going to do? Call their employer?
Yeah.
So it didn't matter how much more they were offering. This other offer, because it was just like, I'm cash, I'm ready to go. Here it is. I'm simple to deal with. Like they didn't even want a building inspection. That then saved them, what is that, $80,000 next the next top offer.
Wow.
So if you can make yourself the easy transaction, that will go a long way.
Yep. No, I love it. It's all amazing advice, Todd, and I do know you did you jump on a plane. You're literally flying the plane as you're at the airport there and learning how to fly, which is something I'd love to do. I know you need to jump off in a moment, but it's been an absolute pleasure there, sir, and I think this information is absolute gold. I'd love to get the audience's feedback. You know, jump onto Ripehouse Advisory on YouTube and put some comments in there. We'll be posting it up there because I'd love to hear some of these insights and some of these thoughts, and obviously some recognition there for Todd and how he does approach things. It would be much appreciated. How can listeners get more Todd love?
I don't know about directly. Bianca might be annoyed at that if I start giving it away online.
Okay.
If you want some pizza and property, check us out or head over to our Facebook page or YouTube channel. But yeah, just search pizza and property. We're posting a few times a week. But if you want to, man, I'm actually happy to do a book giveaway if you want. I'm happy to give away 5 copies if people want to send their details through to you and pass them on.
Okay, that would be amazing. Let's organise that and we'll put it in the show notes. We'll put it on the YouTube channel and I think they'll be snapped up very quickly. And obviously, is the book available on Amazon as well? Or
Yeah, it's Amazon, or you can just go into a Dimmicks or Angus and Robertson, like all good bookstores.
Old school, very good. So that's Australia's home buying guide. Once again, Todd, it's an absolute pleasure. I think this has been absolute gold. Enjoy the flying and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jacob. Been wonderful, man. Take care.
Cheers.